The marketplace really takes on its own life breath, intangible and inanimate objects. The one end is fool, great character development for Zarathustra, glorious purpose. Hello and welcome to Aphorism 7 in the prologue of Thus Spake Zarathustra. I'm so happy you're here, let's dive right into it. Meanwhile, the evening came on, and the marketplace veiled itself in gloom. Then the people dispersed, for even curiosity and terror become fatigued. Zarathustra, however, still sat beside the dead man on the ground, absorbed in thought. So he forgot the time. But at last it became night, and a cold wind blew upon the lonely one. Then arose Zarathustra and said to his heart, "Verily, a fine catch of fish hath Zarathustra made today. It is not a man he hath caught, but a corpse. Somber is human life, and as yet without meaning. A buffoon may be fateful to it. I want to teach men the sense of their existence, which is the Superman, the lightning out of the dark cloud man. But still am I far from them, and my sense speaketh not unto their sense. To men I am still something between a fool and a corpse. Gloomy is the night, gloomy are the ways of Zarathustra. Come, thou cold and stiff companion, I carry thee to the place where I shall bury thee with mine own hands." In preparation for today's Zarathustra analysis, I actually rewatched some of my older reflections because I was feeling somewhat disconnected from the text. And when I rewatched Aphorism 2, I found myself yearning to complete a thought that I only halfway expressed the first time around. And that thought revolves around a quote in the second aphorism of the prologue to Thus Spake Zarathustra. And that quote goes, "Go not to men, but stay in the forest. Go rather to the animals. Why not be like me, a bear amongst bears, a bird amongst birds?" That's said by the saint/old man to Zarathustra. And upon much reflection, I'd like to enhance my argument and close reading and posit that this saint is challenging Zarathustra to only surround himself with like-minded people. The language bear amongst bears and bird amongst birds supports this. To be a bear amongst bears is to be identical in instinct and action. Same with bird amongst birds. But Zarathustra, in a peaceful and quiet way with this saint, really rejects this way of life because it diametrically opposes his whole mission and goal to spread the wisdom that he acquired on the mountain through those 10 years of his life. And in order to do that, I think he pretty immediately realizes that he must be a bear amongst birds or a bird amongst bears, at least for a little while. Right now, he's something between a fool and a corpse amongst men, as we see in this current Aphorism 7, quote, "To men, I am still something between a fool and a corpse." And we can infer that neither a fool nor a corpse are really going to hold attention or be listened to in any meaningful way unless you're a character in Hamlet. The one end is fool, the one who we shouldn't listen to because their advice is inherently, we can infer that their advice will be pretty poor. And then on the other end are those who are not living, who cannot physically be listened to because they're not here. He's really caught in this purgatory of social acceptance of his ideology and ultimately his selfhood because he's fully embracing this Superman ideal and identity. And his sarcastic summary of the day really captures this in kind of an ironic and fun way. So he says, "Verily, a fine catch of fish hath Zarathustra made today. It is not a man he hath caught, but a corpse." Clearly feeling defeated, though I would argue heading in the right direction. We see this sarcasm in combination with a very genuine follow-through on his promise. "Come, thou cold and stiff companion, I carry thee to the place where I shall bury thee with mine own hands." So that repetition of the phrasing from Aphorism 6 with mine own hands really just cements this trust that we, the audience, can have in Zarathustra. We really see some lightheartedness and optimism in this ironical language. Companion is usually an attribute reserved for the living, but here we see Zarathustra embrace this poor man who tragically lost his life. This serves multiple functions. The ones that jump out to me through this close reading are its great character development for Zarathustra, and it's very trust building with the audience, us. So we get to see him really follow through on a promise he made to this dying man, even when no one else was around except for the cover of the night and the marketplace that holds this scene. And I say holds this scene with great purpose. Glorious purpose, as Loki would say. The marketplace really takes on its own life breath. It becomes somewhat of a secondary character in a similar way that the sun did in that first aphorism all the way back there. Here's my proof. Here's my argument proof with the close reading. So the action verb veiled in the very beginning here, and the personification of feelings, I think, really continues this motif that we're starting to see develop of personifying intangible and inanimate objects that we've seen throughout the readings so far. That quote is, "The market veiled itself in gloom." And so if we accept that the marketplace is personified here, then we can do a fun thing and look even deeper into this personification and see what that yields, what consequences, what other things that can be tied to. Gloom, let's take the word gloom, is an ironic thing to veil oneself in. Usually, one would be veiling the gloom itself with another more positive or at least neutral emotion. So I think that's something to hold on to in the front of our mind as we read along. And just to provide some more further evidence of this personification of intangibles, I want to turn to this quote. "Then the people dispersed, for even curiosity and terror become fatigued." We're seeing these feelings embody a certain physicality. Terror and fatigue yield a very specific visual in one's mind, at least it does in my mind. And if these feelings can become fatigued, I think the narrator, or Nietzsche, is kind of planting that seed in our mind that perhaps new feelings can be ushered in, and Zarathustra could be the usherer. I want to jump down a little further in the aphorism here and look at the phrasing of the lonely one, because I think there's some really neat grammatical stuff we can look at here. In the light of all of this personification, I think it's reasonable to not assume that Zarathustra is the only subject this lonely one could be. Here's what I mean. It could apply to Zarathustra, but it could also apply to the rope walker, even though he's no longer alive, or even the marketplace itself. Nietzsche's word choice is very particular. He says, "But at last it became night, and a cold wind blew upon the lonely one. Then rose Zarathustra." Now he could have said, "He then rose, but at last it became night, and a cold wind blew upon the lonely one. He then rose." And then we would infer it's Zarathustra. So using a pronoun like that, like he, would have automatically implied that the lonely one is Zarathustra, I think. However, since he separated the two sentences by using Zarathustra's name, we're left wondering. In fact, this idea is strengthened when we turn to the previous sentence. That reads, "Zarathustra, however, still sat beside the dead man on the ground, absorbed in thought, so that he forgot the time. He forgot the time," which implicitly means Zarathustra forgot the time. If you take away anything from all that, I would just encourage you to pay really close attention to those little word choices in reference back to previous action as we continue to read along, because I think that, in combination with this theme or motif of personification, really more of a theme of personification, together could form a really strong argument, depending on what you want to argue. And finally, let's just return to this final section of Aphorism 7. "Gloomy is the night, gloomy are the ways of Zarathustra." If we needed any more evidence that intangibles personified is a recurrent theme throughout the text so far, here it is. Gloomy is the night, gloomy are the ways of Zarathustra. The fact that they're positioned right next to each other, sentence and sentence, as the conclusionary statement of this aphorism, I think is just a nice little bow tie bookend to our hypothesis or thesis here in this aphorism, with the supporting evidence from other aphorisms coming in and holding up and structuring this argument. And we see the conclusion here where that line I referenced earlier, I shall bury thee with mine own hands. The repetition of word choices in encouraging us to pull back from previous sections or aphorisms of this text so far. So that's really exciting stuff. We're really getting more into the meat of the story, I think. We're still very in the beginning of this story, but we're getting a lot more context, and we're really seeing some great character development in Zarathustra, and I'm excited to see what happens next with you. Thank you for reading with me. I've pinned a question below if you'd like to think more about the passage with me. And of course, as always, if you'd like to catch up on earlier sections, you can find the playlist linked below and on my channel. And I'll also, at the end of this video, will be the previous video. If you want to work your way backwards from Aphorism 7 to 1, you can do that. Or you can just head to that playlist and start from the beginning. I hope you have a great rest of your day, reading, writing, and thinking, and conversing with others. That's it for me. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.